People, people who need people.
Hey there, welcome to That Dang Dad. My name is Phil, and tonight I want to talk about an aspect of American culture that I believe is at the root of so much cruelty and suffering. It's a cultural idea that feels almost banal and part of normal human nature on the one hand. On the other, once you learn to look for it, you can see it woven into the DNA of how the United States thinks about law, order, peace, and prosperity. Because American culture is predicated on the crippling fear that someone, somewhere, is getting something they don't deserve. I first heard this concept expressed in a tweet, and when I went searching for who said it, I discovered something interesting. This has been repeated many times by many different users, and not only that, it's appeared outside of Twitter as well in blog posts and editorial pieces across at least a decade. And it's been used to describe British culture, New Zealand culture, and lots of places that are, shamefully, not the United States. As near as I can tell, it's a riff on a 1925 quip by H.L. Mencken, Puritanism, the haunting fear that someone, somewhere might be happy. But I couldn't figure out who coined this new formulation, so if you know, let me know down in the comments. Anyway, when I first read this tweet, it was one of those things where someone says something just the right way, at just the right time, and you feel like it unlocks your third eye, or like you can finally see the Matrix. It's like, whoa, the clues were there all along. So tonight, I want to take a look at a couple examples of this that I see coming out of some of America's grumpiest curmudgeons, as a way of helping us calibrate ourselves to this ideology so that we get better at naming and shaming it. And I want to discuss how this mindset connects to some broader systems of oppression. And then, I want to finish with some final examples that might sting a little. Intrigued? You should be. Let's go!
People who need.
If you're watching this video, you're probably the sort of person who, upon seeing a hungry child, would feel compelled to, feed that child. Especially if that child was trying to, learn stuff. Whether you have kids, don't have them, like them, or hate them, there's a natural human inclination towards, if not protecting, at least not actively harming the young and the powerless. Nobody likes to see kids in pain. Nobody likes it when an adult bullies a little kid. That kind of power imbalance speaks to all of us. We can all remember a time where somebody with power over us hurt us, and I think it's a near universal human experience to feel a sense of empathy when a powerless child is in need. How then is it a major plank of a major American political party that school lunches be taken away from hungry school children? When asked, many will simply claim that they're trying to prevent fraud and waste. Except these are the same people who will break out into hysterics if you try to cut a single dollar from our ludicrously corrupt military. However, a few brave souls will tell you what it's really about. Personal responsibility. They will claim that parents are responsible for feeding their own kids, not the state. But think about what's left unsaid here. If feeding kids is solely the parent's responsibility and that parent fails in that responsibility, according to the worst people in the world, the state should not step in and pick up the slack, even though it easily could, because the children of struggling parents don't deserve food. What this means is that conservatives view a fed kid as a kind of reward for good behavior. Likewise, they believe a hungry child ought to motivate better behavior in parents. And if it doesn't, for the conservative, it's far more important not to reward an undeserving parent than to err on the side of a child's well-being. But we'll unpack that a little later.
People who need.
Look, your time is valuable. Let's just get to the point. It is less expensive to give unhoused people homes than it is to leave them unhoused, period. You know this, I know this, everyone knows this. Society spends more money keeping people unhoused than it would cost to put a roof over their heads. The party of fiscal responsibility knows this. So what gives? Simply put, in the conservative mind, Some people do not deserve homes. People who have substance abuse issues, people with untreated mental illness, people who have made bad choices haven't earned shelter. According to this mindset, whatever societal harms come from the policy choices that create houselessness pale in comparison to the moral crime of rewarding bad behavior. If someone does not suffer for their sins, it incentivizes them to keep sinning, right?
People who need.
When I started writing this script, I had a bunch of examples of conservatives getting all pissy about handouts going to people who didn't deserve it. From universal health care, to student loan forgiveness, to amnesty for undocumented teens, to unemployment benefits. But it felt repetitive to write, and at the end of the day, it's not a very interesting observation. We all know conservatives and plenty of other neoliberals hate doing anything that helps poor, disabled, and racialized communities. Whether that's because those communities represent a hated out group, or because those communities need to be desperate in order for capitalism to function is a chicken or egg kind of question, but it ain't exactly breaking news. But as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say here, I could feel this little connection buzzing in my brain. And it had to do with the idea of marking someone as undeserving. One of the earliest references I could find for the term undeserving poor comes from the 1834 English Poor Law, which sought to divide poor people between those who are in poverty through no fault of their own, such as illness or age, versus those who were just lazy and made bad choices and were not worthy of assistance. To be deemed undeserving was not just a way of describing how somebody appeared to others, but instead it was a way of prescribing how those being designated that way ought to be treated. It was a way of justifying policy choices designed to discipline or punish those people. And this brought to mind Sara Ahmed's incredible book, What's the Use? As she explores the history and philosophy of what it means to use things, she takes a moment to unpack the concept of something being unused, which is, she explains, a designation placed on things that opens them up to being taken. She writes, Edward Said describes how colonialism as practice made use of use. Imperialism was the theory, colonialism the practice of changing the uselessly occupied territories of the world into useful new versions of European metropolitan society. Colonialism is justified as using what is unused. The word unused is a word that is deeply political, as a frame, as a technique, all the more the moment it appears to be used as mere description. You can declare something unused or ensure something becomes unused as grounds for justifying an appropriation. So, in my mind, declaring people unworthy or undeserving shares a lot of DNA with declaring something unused. It is, a la Ahmed, a frame or technique that justifies an entire political apparatus enforcing it. So much American culture is dedicated to labeling and categorizing people to figure out who's in and who's out, who counts and who doesn't, who deserves things and who doesn't. It infuses nearly everything we do, from allocating housing, to giving out raises, to directing charity, to admitting students to university, all the way to excusing or punishing bad behavior. I talked about this all the way back in my 2020 video about how law enforcement taught me to dehumanize people. Upon seeing a gangster die in the street or an immigrant get deported and separated from their family, we were basically taught to say, it's just a gangster, fuck him. It's just some illegal, fuck him. Compare that to how the judge presiding over the trial of violent rapist Brock Turner spoke about him, lamenting that prison would have severe consequences for the poor young man. We even saw this culture of worthiness rear its ugly head during the COVID pandemic, where thousands of Americans refused to wear masks, refused to get vaccinated to protect their community because COVID was only killing the elderly and the disabled. Meaning, elderly and disabled people are supposed to get sick, and don't deserve even mild accommodations to prevent it. If some MAGA guy got out of his Ford F-250 and bludgeoned Grandma with a baseball bat, we'd call him a monster. But when he knowingly and purposefully gave Grandma a lethal dose of COVID, many called him a patriot. This is because in the United States and any other country racked with neoliberal ideology, elderly and disabled people aren't very useful to society. and thus they are undeserving of extra protections or inconveniences on their behalf. For the anti-mask extremists, it was never about the material impact of wearing a mask. It was about preventing somebody else from receiving an ill-gotten reward. And that ties into the other way that we see this manifest in the American imagination, this obsession with being scammed. Every single one of us has heard somebody say, don't give that unhoused guy money, he's just going to use it to buy booze. Every single one of us has seen those Facebook or those Nextdoor posts about how this person begging for money at a gas station or that person collecting donations for a funeral at an intersection is secretly a scammer who's been fleecing marks all around town. Whether it's individuals asking for charity or government programs designed to aid the poor, millions of Americans lay awake at night fantasizing about some lazy person gaming the system for free stuff. You know, they'll just fake a disability for the check. You know, they're just pretending they can't find a job for the unemployment money. You know, they'll just have extra kids to get state assistance. And you can show them all the stats in the world about how 99% of people are not faking disabilities, but it doesn't matter because in the American psyche, if even one person can get away with it, it's too painful to bear.
People who need.
Anyway, I wanted to talk about this tonight because I think this is a mindset that all of us are susceptible to in certain contexts. My audience is pretty far outside the no school lunches camp, but even those of us with more compassionate politics are not immune to searching people for worthiness. For one thing, ableism is still a huge problem on the left, and one of the ways that it shows up is in how we decide which accommodations we do or don't want to make for other people. Or, to put it in a different way, how we decide which disabled people that we are comfortable barring from our spaces. And sure, we can think of examples that feel kind of reasonable, like we probably can't design a street protest that is accessible to a person who cannot leave a hospital bed. But let's flip it around. What are we doing to include that person and protect their access to political organizing? Are there remote options that we could be exploring? Is anybody even asking that question for them? And for people who can leave their house or a hospital, are we making sure that they can access organizing? Are we meeting in spaces that are accessible to wheelchair users or people with chronic fatigue? Are there accommodations for deaf and hard of hearing participants? How about transcriptions and digests and other systems to help people with cognitive issues? And are masks required, or do immunocompromised people not pass the worthiness test? And look, I know we live in an inaccessible world and we're stuck working with imperfect tools, but this is part of why I think reflecting on who we view as deserving is so important. And this isn't me scolding anyone because I'm plenty guilty of this myself. That's why this practice is something that I want to highlight and get better at. Which brings me to a final example that I want to float out there for us to meditate on. And this one is probably the most prickly for my average viewer and certainly one of the most complex ones. See, I'm a police and prison abolitionist. In short, this is because I believe that the carceral punitive system that we use to punish people who break the social contract does not address the root causes of that breach. People harm their neighbors for a variety of reasons, be that desperation caused by poverty, moments of crisis caused by untreated mental illness, feelings of alienation caused by living inside of a capitalist death cult, all kinds of other scenarios. I believe that throwing people into the trauma pit of prison and then giving them a criminal record when they get out only exacerbates poverty, mental illness, alienation, and desperation. Thus, I believe that prisons do not make us safer, do not deter crime, do not rehabilitate offenders. I believe there are other systems and processes and resources we could create that would address those issues. But one of the most common types of pushback that I receive on this position is, what about all the people who deserve to be in prison? And I know I don't need to run down a list of horrific crimes for you here. We can all pick the ones that bother us the most. And I don't want to be glib or flippant about this. Some people in prison have done horrific things, monstrous things. They have caused irreparable harm in their communities. You don't have to be a right-wing chud to think that some of these people might deserve their fate. And it's beyond the scope of this video to give you the 10-point plan about what abolitionists are going to do about the murderers, although I do want to revisit that in a later video all on its own. Rather, I just want to leave us with the idea that deciding who deserves mercy, compassion, rehabilitation, liberty, dignity, whatever you want to break it down as, deciding who is deserving of these things is a political project in exactly the same way as deciding who deserves school lunches or public assistance. And likewise, deciding that somebody is undeserving is a prescriptive label that informs what we will allow ourselves to do to that person. And if I wanted to get really spicy, I would point out that this carceral punitive mindset is also used against creators, streamers, and other fixtures of left-wing online communities who fuck up and cause harm, and that we're all pretty quick to decide who deserves a second chance and who no longer deserves to have a platform anymore. I'm not even saying it's wrong or immoral to decide that some people are undeserving necessarily. I am Mr. Punch Nazis after all. I'm all for removing agents of harm from the communities that they are wounding. What I'm saying is that this decision-making should not be left as background processes happening in our brain without reflection and intentionality. It is a frame, a technique, and one we ought to wield responsibly. So what do you think about all this? Have you been bit by this philosophy in your own life? Or can you think of times that you have perhaps thoughtlessly divided people into the deserving and undeserving? Let us know down in the comments. Anyway, I appreciate your time tonight. I know the script was a little meandering. This is one of those videos that evolved in my mind as I was writing it. But thank you for sticking with it, and I hope you got something out of it. Please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't, and please share this video with somebody that you think might find it interesting. Hope to see you on the next one. Have a good night.